The clock on the dashboard read 11:47 p.m. as Ari eased the Toyota Camry onto Cedar Avenue. Rain slicked the streets, turning tail lights into smeared rubies in the dark. A thin drizzle tapped against the windshield, and the wipers swished at a steady rhythm. Inside the car, the overhead light glowed softly over the dash cam, its red recording indicator blinking like a silent heartbeat. Ari rubbed a hand over tired eyes. It had been a long night of back-to-back rides, the kind that leaves you wondering how many more fares you need before you can finally log off. The navigation voice chimed in with directions to the next pickup, but for a moment Ari let the wheel drift, savoring the lull between passengers. No small talk, no rushing pedestrians, just the hum of engine and the gentle patter of rain. "Only one more ride," Ari muttered under breath. "One more and then I'm done." The Uber app pinged with the request. A quick glance confirmed it was another surge fare, 1.8 tons. Perfectly timed. The app showed a pickup 5 blocks north, folded into a quiet residential stretch. Ari tapped accept, and the confirmation beep echoed through the cabin. The GPS rerouted, leading the car away from Cedar and onto Morton Street. A row of identical brick houses passed by, porch lights fading in the haze. A broken stop sign leaned against a telephone pole. A stray cat darted under a parked van. Ari checked the rearview mirror reflexively, as if expecting to see someone already waiting. But the back seat was empty, just the plaid seat covers and the faint scent of peppermint car air freshener. The dashcam light insisted that it was still rolling. The walk to the pickup point felt slow. Ari felt the weight of wariness in shoulders, the ache in legs from leaning forward all evening. It had been weeks since sleep had felt truly restful. Bills stacked up. The landlord was calling. The car lease payment loomed in a few days. Every ride stung a little more. Turning onto Elmwood Lane, Ari saw the lone figure by the curb under a flickering street lamp. A woman in a gray coat stood perfectly still, her arms folded against herself as if she could shut out the damp. She held no umbrella. Her face was hidden under a hood, shadowed and unreadable. Ari pulled to a stop a few feet away and tapped the horn once. Softly. The woman didn't move at first. Then, almost imperceptibly, she lifted her head and slipped into the back seat without a word. "Good evening. Where to?" Ari asked, sliding forward and clicking the seatbelt release. Still no answer. The silence settled like a stone in the car. The heater clicked on, and warm air swept across the interior. Ari's voice felt too loud, reverberating off leather seats. Wherever you need." Ari forced a smile, eyes flicking to the rearview mirror. The outline of the woman's hooded head remained motionless. No nod, no shift, just an unspoken permission. Glancing at the dashcam, Ari noted how the lens caught the rain streaming down the windshield, how the interior light painted the cabin in a pale glow. The timestamp in the corner glowed green, 23:52:11. The audio icon blinked, everything appeared normal. But from the corner of Ari's eye, the woman's hand moved. A single finger tapped the dashcam gently, as though testing its surface. Ari blinked and looked up. The finger hovered, then retreated into the sleeve of the coat. "Everything all right back there?" Ari asked, voice hollow. No reply. The woman sat as still as a statue, shoulders squared and back straight. The hood kept her hair hidden. The collar of the coat was pulled high, like armor against the night. Ari shifted gears and merged back onto Morton Street. Windshield wipers churned. Neon signs glowed, diffused through the mist. Traffic lights flickered from green to amber to red. The GPS directed a left onto Pinecrest Drive. Pinecrest and Elm, the app confirmed. Ari suppressed a growing knot of tension. Normally, riders gave an address before entering. This one had simply sat silent, let the map speak for her. Ari's mind raced through possibilities. A prank? A dare? Something drug-fueled? Teenagers like to play games, order a car, then disappear. But this woman looked too composed for that. Her posture was correct, her coat clean, her movements precise. How did she get my car without the app saying where to? Ari thought. The app usually required a destination beforehand. But this request had popped up with no location in the chat. Only when Ari accepted did the destination map appear. A click on the center console revealed the address, 412 Pinecrest Drive. A modest home near the edge of town. Fairly close, really. No reason to be alarmed. Ari eased down Pinecrest, rolling past tidy lawns and shuttered windows. The rain grew heavier, each drop clattering on the roof with more insistence. The old street lamps struggled to cut through the gloom. Then the GPS recalculated. Ari frowned. It was redirecting back toward the highway. No turn onto Elm. The blue navigation line bent and curved, guiding Ari toward the freeway on-ramp instead. Strange, Ari murmured, tapping the touchscreen. No change. The dashcam recorded every second. Ari kept speed low. Inside, the silence pressed in. The car radio played soft jazz, but the volume seemed muted. Ari clicked mute and let the interior be ruled by the hum of tires on wet asphalt. A sudden flash of movement in the rearview mirror startled Ari's heart. Eyes darted back. The woman leaned forward, hood down now, revealing a pale face, eyes wide and unblinking. But she spoke not to Ari, but to the lens of the dashcam. "You don't belong here," she whispered. Ari's chest tightened. Breath caught. The voice was soft, urgent, almost pleading. It came through the speakers, though the radio was off. The dashcam audio picked it up, distorted, like wind through a cracked window, but unmistakably her words. For a moment, Ari's mind went blank. Who spoke? How could someone whisper into the camera? The woman leaned even closer, and her lips barely moved, yet her voice filled the car. "You will drive until you die." The words echoed through Ari's head. Eyes stung, palms sweat. The steering wheel seemed suddenly heavy. Ari slammed on the brakes. Tires skidded in protest, and the car fishtailed before coming to a shuddering halt. The woman sat back, hood up again, silent. The engine idled. Rain pattered. Streetlights gleamed. For a heartbeat, silence reclaimed the car. Then Ari's trembling hand reached to the mute button, radio still off. The dashcam light still blinked. The timestamp flickered. Ari opened the passenger door. Cold air rushed in. Feet hit the pavement. Heart thundered. A quick glance inside. The backseat was empty. No coat. No woman. Just the slick leather and the lone peppermint scent. Ari's breath came in ragged gasps. Rain-soaked hair and jacket. The doors locked automatically behind. The app still showed the ride as in progress. Frantically, Ari looked around. Empty street. No footprints in the wet pavement, no glimmer of movement under street lamps, just the hush of falling rain. Fingers trembled as Ari reached into the console and tapped End Ride. Confirmation beep. The screen blinked to You have arrived, but the recorded audio played back a whisper, I know you. Ari recoiled as if struck. Eyes darted to the dashcam, that little red light shining innocently. The recording icon blinked on as though daring Ari to watch. With a deep, unsteady breath, Ari forced the door shut, climbed back into the driver's seat, and clicked Review Recording. The screen flickered. There, crystal clear, was the time-stamped clip. Static, then her voice, You will drive until you die. Ari's reflection quivered in the dark screen, a driver caught between reality and nightmare. Outside, the rain continued, uncaring, as if the world beyond the windshield had moved on without her. Some shifts should never have been taken, but Ari had taken this one, and now there was no turning back. Ari's hands trembled as the final echoes of the stranger's voice faded on the dashcam recording. The street beyond the windshield was deserted, every porch dark, every window shuttered against the night. Rain still pattered relentlessly on the roof, like each drop a tiny percussion against Ari's pounding heart. For a moment, Ari sat frozen, staring at the muted screen. Then, reflexively, Ari reached up and tapped End Ride a second time, as though that might obliterate the memory of what had just happened. The app reset to the home screen, showing waiting hours and distance logged. Ari's thumb hovered over the Go Offline button, but something held it back. A new ride request pinged at 11:57 p.m. Ari's phone buzzed insistently against the console. With a stiff swallow, Ari clicked it open. Pickup, Surge 2.0 test, location, unknown, destination, hidden until arrival, no address, no profile photo, no name, just a faceless icon. Ari's breath caught. The app had never sent a request without at least a street name, yet here it was, daring to tempt again, offering double the regular fare if Ari would only accept. Ari's mind screamed to refuse, to lock the doors and drive home. But the rent was due tomorrow, and the car payment waited like a guillotine blade. The promise of 2 times the standard rate felt like blood money, but money all the same. Ari stared at the screen, heart aching with dread and desire. After a long, shuddering moment, Ari tapped Accept. Immediately, the map snapped into view, with a blinking dot 10 blocks east on a narrow side street. The route was short, a single turn onto Lancaster Row. Ari exhaled, flicked on the hazards, and steered toward the freeway entrance. The city beyond the highway lights seemed oblivious to Ari's inner turmoil. Cars passed on the overpass. Neon signs from late-night diners glowed soft halos through the mist. Yet Ari felt isolated, as though the car were sealed in a bubble of rain and darkness. Each street crossing felt too quiet. The absence of other life unnerved Ari more than any whisper. Inside the cabin, the only sound was the engine's low hum and the rhythm of wipers. The air felt thick, pregnant with something unseen. At exactly 12:03 a.m., Ari turned onto Lancaster Row, a narrow lane lined with shuttered warehouses. Broken windows gaped like hollow eyes. A single street lamp flickered overhead, buzzing with electricity. The rain droplets caught in its light, falling like motes of silver. Ari slowed to a crawl, peering through the mist. There, by a crumbling brick wall, stood the woman. Her gray coat was now sodden and clung to her form. The hood was down, revealing strands of dark hair plastered to her pale cheeks. She stood eerily still, staring at Ari's headlights. The car came to a stop a few feet away. Ari's pulse raged. With a trembling hand, Ari unlocked the doors. The click of the latch sounded deafening in the empty street. The woman's lips parted in a silent invitation. No bag, no phone held. Her hands hung at her sides as though she had nowhere to put them. Ari swallowed hard. "Where to?" Ari asked, keeping voice steady despite the quake. She didn't answer. Instead, her head tilted like a curious animal's, eyes gleaming in the light. Without a word, she stepped forward and slipped into the back seat. Ari closed the door and leaned forward. "You? You have to tell me where you're going." Silence. Then, faintly, a rustle of fabric as she turned toward the dashcam. Her eyes locked on the lens, not on Ari. The air in the car shifted as though the temperature had dropped several degrees. Finally, she whispered, barely audible, yet the dashcam would capture it, "Anywhere but here." Ari stiffened. The phrase was a riddle. "That's not a place. I need an address." She pressed a gloved fingertip to her lips and shook her head. Then, with deliberate slowness, she tapped the dashcam once. Twice. The world outside blurred as Ari's vision narrowed to the back seat. "Let it lead," she murmured, voice hushed and distant. It was not directed at Ari, but at the dashcam itself. Ari's skin crawled. "Lead where?" Ari whispered back, but the question was swallowed by the soft patter of rain. A click sounded as the dashcam's red light flicked from rec to STY. Ari stared in disbelief. The device that had recorded every moment so faithfully now lay dark, as if powered off. A hollow silence settled over the car. Ari's ribcage tightened. The oppressive quiet felt like hands pressing in. The only illumination came from the street lamp overhead, thinning through the mist. Ari reached out, hand hovering near the dashcam, but did not touch it. Instead, Ari focused on the rearview mirror. The woman's face filled the glass, eyes deep and unblinking, lips parted in a ghostly half-smile. Ari's reflection hovered behind, pale and drawn. "What do you want?" Ari asked, voice cracking. Her smile widened imperceptibly. "To show you." Ari's breath hitched. "Show me what?" She dipped her head, eyes never leaving the mirror's glass. "Your path," she whispered, tone caressing each word. "I will guide you." Without warning, the car shuddered as Ari shifted into drive. The engine roared and the tires creaked on the wet asphalt. The route on the app had changed. It now displayed a new, winding path, tracing back toward the oldest part of the city. Ari's instincts screamed to stop, to reverse, to flee. But the woman's gaze held Ari fast. One misstep, one glance away, and she vanished like smoke. Hands gripping the wheel, Ari followed the shrieking GPS voice. "Turn left in 300 feet, then keep right at the fork, proceed 2 miles. Ari swallowed hard. "If I do this, if I follow," her voice cut through, "you will learn." Ari's heart thundered. A map laid across the screen, arrows pulsing in phosphorescent blue. The route led past abandoned factories, through shadowed alleys, and along brick-lined service roads. No landmarks Ari recognized, only the promise of answers and the threat of more questions to come. As the car rolled forward, Ari bent low to peer at the woman's face. Her eyes gleamed with an otherworldly light, lips still curved in that knowing smile. The world outside the windows turned to a smear of rain and darkness, as though the city itself were dissolving. "Show me," Ari whispered, voice taut with dread and resolve. The woman leaned forward so her breath ghosted across the dashcam lens. "Watch," she said, her whisper a silk-soft command. Ari's palms slicked on the wheel. Feet tapped the pedals. The car surged ahead into the night, guided by a passenger who spoke only to the camera, and a driver who could not look away. Rain and shadows swirled around them, sealing their pact. Ari would follow, and the woman would reveal the secrets hidden in the dark. The Camry glided through the darkness, its headlights carving a path through sheets of rain. Ari's fingers trembled on the wheel, knuckles whitening under the strain. The dashboard map pulsed with the woman's chosen route. No familiar street names, just a ribbon of blue winding into parts of the city Ari had never visited. Silence filled the cabin. Outside, water sluiced down window panes. Inside, the only sound was the gentle whir of the blower fan and the distant hum of tires on wet asphalt. Ari tried again to break the quiet. "Do you ever talk?" Ari ventured, voice low. "A little? Anything?" The woman did not turn. Her profile remained rigid and still beneath the faint glow of the instrument panel. Ari swallowed, heart fluttering. The backseat lantern light cast her face in soft relief. Pale skin, dark lashes, lips pressed together in a line of porcelain calm. Ari cleared throat. "I need to know who I'm driving." No response, just the muted patter of rain. The air felt thick, heavy, as though charged with anticipation. Ari pressed lips together and moved on. "Can I at least play some music? You said lead, right? Thought maybe a tune might help." Ari reached for the radio dial. Before a station could settle, a single gloved finger shot out and tapped the power button, silencing the car's audio altogether. The cabin had been silent, now it felt cavernous. Ari's pulse skipped. "Okay," Ari said, voice unsteady. "No music. Fine. But you need to say something. Anything." The woman's hand dropped and she leaned forward. Her eyes met Ari's in the rearview mirror for a heartbeat. No recognition, no greeting, only a calm, unreadable gaze. Then she returned to her upright posture, hood drawn up again, as if that momentary connection had not occurred. A knot formed in Ari's stomach. "This isn't normal," Ari whispered. "You have to talk to me." Still no answer. The woman sat with her hands folded in her lap, coat sleeves hiding even her wrists. Ari noticed the faintest tremor in her fingers, but whether from cold, fear, or something else, Ari could not tell. The route led them under an overpass. Cracks in the concrete dripped with moisture, and columns stood like silent sentinels. One of those columns had been sprayed in graffiti, a pair of empty, staring eyes that seemed to follow the car as it passed. Ari glanced at the rearview mirror, just the woman's hooded head unmoving. Traffic lights flickered ahead, bathed in neon reflections. Ari stopped at a red. The engine idled. The woman leaned forward again, this time brushing back the hood to reveal her face. Pale, symmetrical features. Her eyes glimmered like dark moons under the street lamp's glow. She tapped the dashcam once more. Then, just as abruptly, she withdrew her hand and folded the hood back. The camera light had not changed, but Ari could feel its presence, unnervingly intimate. Time stretched. Ari's chest tightened, the red changed to green, and the car rolled ahead, but neither of them spoke for blocks. The road curved through a residential district. No street lamps, just black silhouettes of trees and the occasional locked gate. A chill crawled up Ari's spine. It wasn't cold in the car. Heat still pulsed from the vents. This was something else, a presence, a weight. Ari stole another glance. The woman's head was turned slightly, eyes fixed on the blank space beside the dashcam lens. Ari realized with a start, she wasn't watching the road. She was watching the camera. "Why the camera?" Ari asked, voice almost a whisper. "Why don't you look at me?" She turned her head fully and for the first time spoke directly to Ari, though her lips did not move. "I'm not here for you." The voice crackled from the car's speakers. Thin, distant. A voice that belonged to the woman, yet seemed to drift in from another place. Ari's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "Then who? What are you here for?" Her face remained calm, as if hearing nothing. The voice answered, "For the watcher, the one who sees beyond the wheel." The car's radio screen flashed a brief static burst, then returned to its dark standby mode. Ari's breath hitched. Questions churned. Had she spoken? Did the dashcam replay that voice? The speakers had carried it, but the audio icon remained dark on the dashcam. Ari slowed the car to 40, then 30. The world outside narrowed to two pools of light ahead. Every reflective surface, side mirrors, rear windows seemed to flicker with movement, but when Ari looked, no one stood behind. Finally, Ari exhaled and settled into the driver's seat. "Listen," Ari said, voice low. "I don't know who you are, I don't know what you want, but you're not scaring me. At least, I'm not going to let you scare me." She remained motionless. Then, in that hush, a single, slow clap sounded. Soft, deliberate, coming from the back seat. Ari's heart froze. Clapping in applause? Mockery? Ari's head snapped to the mirror. The woman's gloved hands lay flat on her lap. No sound came from her. The clap had echoed in the car, yet the source was unseen. "Okay," Ari rasped. This is some game, some sick." A sudden jolt, as if someone tapped the brake. The car lurched forward. Ari glanced down. The foot was still on the accelerator. The road ahead rippled as though seen through water. The streetlights elongated, and for a moment the windshield became a mirror reflecting Ari's wide eyes and trembling lips. On the dashcam, the recording light illuminated red. But the timestamp hovered over the next moment. Ari realized with horror that they had been driving for more than 14 minutes through streets that twisted back on themselves, loops that led nowhere familiar. Ari pressed fingers to the console, silencing the dashcam recording. The light flicked off, but the device still recorded, Ari was certain. The roads outside had grown unnaturally dark, as if the city had receded behind them. "Where are you taking me?" Ari demanded. The woman leaned forward so Ari's vision tunneled into her face. Lips close to the glass, she whispered, "To the beginning." Ari's chest constricted. The beginning of what? Her hand reached out, touching the dashcam yet again. The glass vibrated under her glove. The cabin lights flickered. Outside, the rain halted midair as though time itself had paused. Then the woman's voice, soft, distant, throbbing through unseen speakers, said one word: "Everything." Ari sat in the silence that followed, breath caught in throat. The car idled under a knotted sky. The world held its breath. And in that space between heartbeats, Ari understood. This was only the start. Not of a ride, not of a journey, but of a reckoning. With trembling resolve, Ari shifted into drive and pressed forward deeper into the dark unknown, where a passenger spoke only to the camera and promised to unveil every secret Ari had ever buried. Ari forced the Toyota into a slow crawl, eyes darting between the slick pavement ahead and the rearview mirror where the woman sat, motionless as a statue. The route on the GPS now wove through a tangle of unlit side streets, alleyways with rusted dumpsters and cracked brick walls. Not a soul in sight. The mist fell heavier, blurring the edges of taillights and traffic signs, until the world beyond the windshield felt like a watercolor bleeding into darkness. A distant rumble of thunder rolled overhead. Every time a bolt of lightning flared, the backseat silhouette snapped into eerie relief, the woman's hood falling back to reveal her face. Pale skin, dark eyes, unblinking, watchful. Ari's chest tightened. It felt as if the storm outside had seeped into the car itself. Ari took a steadying breath. "All right," came a trembling exhale. Let's try this again. Where are we going?" No answer, only the rhythmic slap of rain and the low hum of the heater. Ari's knuckles whitened on the wheel. The thought circled, maybe this had been a hallucination, a fluke of stress. But the dashcam light remained red, stubbornly recording every second. Up ahead, a narrow street lined with fenced yards appeared. The GPS instructed a right turn. As Ari turned, like the backseat window reflected an empty lane, no fence, no yard, just a wall of darkness. Something in that reflection made Ari's stomach sink. The lane outside had shifted, become unfamiliar, as if the world itself had rearranged. Ari's pulse thundered. This isn't right. The woman's lips moved, though her voice did not immediately register in the cabin. A soft whisper carried through the dashcam's hidden microphone, trembled into existence. "You denied me." Ari's breath caught. Denied her what? The whisper reverberated, oddly distant, like a memory echoing in an empty hall. The pitch was low, childlike yet ancient, both pleading and accusing. Ari blinked. What are you talking about?" She leaned forward so her face filled the rearview mirror. Lightning flashed again, illuminating her fully. Dark hair plastered to her cheeks, eyes glinting with something cold and hungry. Her lips barely moved, yet the whisper emerged. "Fix me." The words sliced through the haze of rain and static. Ari's heart twisted. Fix her? The implication hit like a punch. Ari's mind flashed back to that prophecy in Chapter 1, the crash, the pedestrian, the guilt that had haunted every sleepless night. Guilt so heavy it felt like a second skin. Had Ari denied someone help once? Or many times? Ari's voice came out rough. I don't know you. I can't fix someone I don't know." Another flash of lightning, and for a heartbeat, the dashcam's timestamp blinked strangely, and an impossible reading. Ari squinted. The moment passed, and it settled to 15, but the obscurity lingered in the pit of Ari's stomach. The car rolled to a stop at another red light, this one dangling over a deserted intersection. Rain pounded on the hood like 1,000 tiny fists. Ari's breathing was shallow, every inhale a tremor. Then, softest of all, another whisper, "You left me." Ari's head snapped toward the woman. Her lips parted in an almost hurt expression, sorrow unlike anything Ari had seen in her face until now. Yet her voice sounded hollow, as though channeled through a distant void. Ari swallowed. I don't remember." "Remember," she hissed, voice sinking into the car seats. "Remember what you did." Ari's mind reeled. Memories flooded back. A late-night drive months ago, a pedestrian stumbling into the road. Ari had swerved, lost control, the figure vanishing beneath the car. Ari had fled, too terrified to help, too panicked to stop. The silence of that moment had numbed Ari's senses. No one had ever connected those guilt-soaked hours to this ride, until now. Tears welled in Ari's eyes. "I'm sorry," Ari whispered, voice cracking. "I'm so sorry." She leaned forward, face inches from the dashcam lens, and whispered, her voice trembling but loud enough for the hidden microphone to catch. "I'm sorry." The car fell silent again, the rain softened to a gentle patter, the light turned green. Ari pressed the accelerator, but the world beyond the windshield seemed to hang suspended. The other lanes were empty, no headlights flickered ahead. A single word echoed from the back seat, barely audible but laden with meaning. "Good." Ari's throat constricted. Good? Was that approbation? Relief? A promise? Before Ari could process it, the GPS recited a new instruction. Turn left in 400 feet, then stop. Ari obeyed, guiding the car onto a narrow drive that led to an old church with boarded-up windows. A single lantern hung over the door, swaying in the wind. Ivy crawled up the stone walls. The parking lot was cracked, weeds pushing through asphalt. Ari exhaled, legs trembling. "Is this where you want to be? Fixed?" Silence, then a breath. A whispered sigh, drifting through the cabin. "Here." Ari parked beneath the lantern's glow, heart pounding so fiercely it felt like wings beating against ribs. The dashcam light pulsed red, a heartbeat in miniature. Ari reached slowly for the passenger door handle, mind racing with dread and regret. Every instinct screamed to run, to lock the doors and drive straight to safety. But something held Ari in place, a need to face this specter, to atone for what had been denied so long ago. As Ari's hand touched the cold metal, the woman's voice drifted from the dashcam. "Healing begins when you embrace the truth." Ari swallowed hard, gaze fixed on the boarded church door ahead. A reckoning awaited, one that would demand more than words of apology. In the hush of the night, under the patter of rain and the flicker of ancient lantern light, Ari realized that the first whisper was only the beginning. Fix her. Remember. Heal. The road to absolution stretched before them into darkness, and neither driver nor passenger could turn back now. Ari's fingers hovered at the edge of the passenger door handle, heart hammering against ribs. Rain glossed the church's boarded windows, turning the ivy-green walls into a slick, living tapestry. The lantern overhead cast a wavering circle of light on the cracked asphalt, illuminating motes of mist swirling in the air. For a heartbeat, Ari, trembling, soaked, and guilt-racked, wondered if this was a trap. Summoning grit, Ari stepped out and closed the door behind with a soft click. The car's engine idled low, its rumble blending with the steady drip of rain from the eaves. Each footstep toward the church's heavy wooden door felt weighted, punishment for a past sin. Ari's breath formed clouds in the chill air. "Truth," Ari whispered into the gloom. "I have to face mine." At the door, the boards were splintered in places, nails rusted and ready to yield. Ari pressed a palm against the damp wood grain rough under fingertips, and pushed. The boards creaked and popped until they gave way enough for a single arm to slip inside. Inside, darkness awaited, thick and silent, smelling of old stone and dust. Ari paused on the threshold, wavering. The rain's patter droned behind like impatient wings. Summoning courage, Ari crossed into the nave, every sense alert. The only light came from the lantern outside, filtering through gaps in the boards in slender beams. Motes of dust danced in the shafts. Footsteps echoed on stone as Ari ventured deeper. The pews were overturned, like fallen soldiers frozen mid-fall. At the front, the altar rose in semi-darkness, draped in cobwebs, and there, seated on the altar steps, was the woman, her coat now off, revealing a simple white dress streaked with mud. Her dark hair clung to her face, but eyes still shone with that quiet intensity. Ari's voice trembled. "Why bring me here?" She didn't look up. Her reflection in a shattered stained glass panel behind her showed a face both familiar and impossible. Ari's breath caught as memories flooded back, fractured scenes of a rainy night months ago. The crosswalk. The sudden figure stumbling into the car's path, the sharp squeal of tires, then silence, Ari's hands shaking on the wheel, and then flight. The woman's whisper came, soft as silk. "You denied me help." Ari's chest tightened, the memory of prying open the passenger door, finding only blood on asphalt, the unrecognizable form crumpled beneath the headlights, the distant sound of sirens fading. Ari had left without staying. The guilt had rotted through every night since, but Ari had buried it under work and excuses. Eyes lifting, Ari met hers in the broken glass. Ari's voice cracked. "I'm so sorry, I was scared." The woman rose, dress whispering against stone. She stepped into one beam of lantern light. Water dripped from her sleeves. Ari saw now the bruise around her temple, the blood congealed in her hair. But her eyes were not angry, they held a tremor of sorrow. "You could have saved me," she said, voice hushed but clear. "A life begs for mercy. You turned away." Tears blurred Ari's vision. "I know. I've remembered every moment since." She paused and tilted her head as though listening for something beyond the crumbling ceiling. For a moment, Ari heard only silence, then a whisper so faint it might have been the wind. "Redeem yourself." Ari swallowed hard. "Tell me how." Her lips curved in the faintest smile. "Begin by forgiving yourself." She stepped closer, and Ari felt a warmth bloom in the icy gloom. "Then help me rest." Ari hesitated, voice barely above a breath. "How do I help you rest?" She lifted a hand and brushed a muddy lock from her forehead. "Let the world know what happened here." Ari's brow furrowed. "You want me to tell the story?" Her eyes glimmered. "Speak my name. Let others know I existed, that I mattered." The words struck Ari like a promise. Guilt had long dictated silence. Now it demanded confession. "I will," Ari vowed, voice trembling with relief and resolve. She inclined her head, and shadows gathered around her form. "Then I can go home." Ari stepped forward, heart heavy with both pain and hope. "I'll write it. I'll tell everyone." Her smile widened, bittersweet. "Thank you." A crack of thunder rolled overhead, and rain battered the broken boards. When Ari blinked, the woman on the altar steps had vanished. Only the empty chapel remained, lit by lantern glow and charged with a quiet peace. Ari stood alone, rain-soaked and exhausted, but lighter than ever before. In the hush, Ari whispered into the darkness, "Rest well." Beyond the boarded windows, dawn's first light threatened on the horizon. And in the sacred silence of that ruined church, Ari knew that the road ahead, though dark, would lead to redemption. Ari slid back behind the wheel as dawn's pale light seeped through the windshield. The rain had tapered to a fine mist, leaving the streets slick and gleaming. Inside the Camry, the engine's hum felt too loud, pulses of tension vying with the promise of redemption in Ari's chest. But the woman's parting words, "Then I can go home," echoed like a benediction, giving Ari a fragile sense of purpose. The Uber app still sat open on the console screen, but Ari hesitated to close it. There would be no more rides tonight, or so Ari vowed. Instead, Ari tapped review recording, curious to hear the woman's whispered final wish again. The dashcam clicked into life. Through the speakers came her voice, soft and sorrowful. "Speak my name. Let others know I existed, that I mattered." Ari pressed stop, thumb shaking. There was no reason to linger on ghosts. The church behind had already started to fade in the rearview mirror, swallowed by the mist. Ari exhaled, refocused on the road, and flicked off the app. It was time to trace what had happened. The address bar still showed the last GPS point, a pin at the boarded-up chapel on Hawthorne Lane. Ari tapped history and noted the coordinates. With a steadying breath, Ari input them into a new map app on the phone, one that offered satellite view and street names. The chapel stood on an old back road, now renamed Trinity Court, its name long erased from memory. Ari accelerated onto the main thoroughfare, tires hissing on wet asphalt. Every turn felt like retracing steps in a dream. Streets, once unfamiliar, now etched clearly in Ari's mind. The whole drive back to town felt claustrophobic, as though the city itself conspired to loop Ari around the same dark blocks. By midday, Ari arrived at the city archives, a squat building of concrete and glass, with interior walls lined in filing cabinets. The librarian, a bespectacled woman with a patient smile, let Ari sift through old newspapers and public records. Ari spread mugshots and court notices across a long oak table. Hours passed in a blur of dates and typewritten lines. Finally, Ari found her. Evelyn Marshall, 1985 to 2024. A pedestrian struck by an Uber driver on Hawthorne Lane one stormy night in March of last year. The coroner's report noted head trauma, ambiguous witness accounts, and no identifying documents on her person. The case had gone cold. Her name never made the papers beyond a brief obituary tucked on page 42. Ari's breath shook. Evelyn Marshall. The woman's whispered name had been more than a plea. It was a declaration of existence. Ari photocopied the obituary and coroner's cover sheet, carefully stacking the pages. As Ari fed the last sheet into the machine, the librarian leaned over. "Are you related?" she asked gently, noticing the depth of focus in Ari's eyes. Ari shook head, voice cracked. "No. I drove that night. I want to tell her story." The librarian nodded once, gravely. "Then you have a duty to her memory." Outside, clouds parted to reveal bursts of sunlight. For the first time in weeks, Ari felt warmth, not just from the spring sun, but from something deeper. Hope. By evening, Ari had drafted a post for a local historical forum, sharing Evelyn's name, her story, and a plea for anyone with information or photos to come forward. Ari read it aloud to the empty Camry. Last March on Hawthorne Lane, 19-year-old Evelyn Marshall was struck and left to die by a distracted driver. Her name faded from headlines, her face unknown. Today, I remember her. If you knew her, if you have a memory or a photograph, please share, so Evelyn can rest and so we might all learn the value of a life. A final tap on post sent the words into the digital ether. Ari watched the confirmation. Your post has been published. The dashcam's red light pulsed softly in response, as if acknowledging the gesture. For a long moment, Ari sat still, engine off. The Camry felt like a confessional booth, its four doors having witnessed whispers of guilt and pleas for mercy. Now it held the promise of atonement. A notification chimed on the phone. New reply to your post. Ari opened the message to see a grainy photograph of Evelyn, smiling in a sundress, hair braided, eyes bright. A caption, I was there that night. This is her. She called me Sunday as her ride home. Please help me tell her story. Tears blurred Ari's vision. The hunt was over, and in its place, a new journey began. Giving voice to everything the camera had captured, everything Ari had denied, and everything the world needed to remember. As rain began again outside, Ari whispered into the dashcam one last time. Thank you, Evelyn. You will not be forgotten. And in that quiet confession, the past and present merged, forging a path toward peace for driver and passenger alike. Ari flicked off the engine and sat in the Camry beneath a flickering street lamp, fingers still trembling on the wheel. The photograph of Evelyn Marshall lay on the passenger seat, bright-eyed and alive, yet its edges felt brittle in Ari's grasp. Outside, the rain had returned, tapping a jittery rhythm against the roof. A sudden buzz from the phone screen startled Ari. A second reply to the forum post. Someone claimed they'd seen Evelyn's ghost riding in an Uber late at night, whispering into the dashcam. Ari stared at the words. Gooseflesh crawled up arms. Had the work of memorializing Evelyn somehow drawn her back? Heart pounding, Ari peeled out of the lot and onto the highway, headlights cutting through the mist. The road stretched out in ribbons of wet asphalt. Every reflective surface, road signs, guardrails, the rearview mirror itself, seemed to shimmer with movement. But when Ari glanced again, nothing stirred except rain. The dashcam's red light blinked insistently. Ari's breathing hitched. Could the camera actually be recording more than just frames? Had it become a conduit? Ari glanced down at the console. The map app, which had been closed, suddenly reopened, tracing a route back toward Hawthorne Lane. No prompt from Ari, no notification. The route appeared as if by its own will, pulsing in electric blue. Ari's pulse jumped to panic. No, Ari whispered, voice tight. Not again. Hands shaking, Ari tapped cancel, but the route only snapped back into focus, the arrow circling back to that old stretch of road. Outside, the world seemed to tilt. The taillights of the car ahead bled into long red streaks on the wet pavement. Ari gripped the wheel and swerved into a side road, hoping to shake the uncanny guidance. Each turn felt urgent, desperate. Yet the blue line reappeared moments later, as though the city itself conspired to drag Ari home. Heart racing, Ari flicked on the radio. Static hissed through the speakers. A soft melody emerged, Evelyn's favorite song, the one mentioned in the lone photograph's caption. Ari's breath caught. The song should not have been in the Camry's library. No passenger ever requested it. It wasn't even on the device. But there it was, spilling through the speakers. Desperation rising, Ari slammed the volume off. Silence roared in the car. Cold sweat beaded on the forehead. Shadows danced in the rearview mirror. Ari pulled off onto an empty frontage road, slammed on the brakes, and killed the engine. The dashcam's light still glowed red in the dark. Every instinct screamed to flee, but Ari remained frozen, as though glued to the seat. Minutes passed in suffocating stillness, broken only by the patter of rain. Then from the back seat came the softest shuffling. Ari's head snapped toward the mirror. The woman's shape materialized in silhouette, coat draped over one shoulder. Ari's voice caught, "Evelyn?" No answer. Instead, the dash cam recorded her whisper, thin as mist. "You called me home." Ari's chest heaved. I did to help you rest." She leaned forward, eyes reflecting the dash cam's glow. "Then stay." Ari's mind raced. Stay here in this waiting lot? Stay on this highway? Each option felt like a trap, but the plea carried weight. A final request in the voice of someone who had once begged for help. Ari swallowed, legs numb. "Okay," Ari said, voice trembling. "I'm staying." Her silhouette stepped forward, coming into the pale circle of instrument panel light. Evelyn's face was calm, beautiful in the gloom, as though peace had finally claimed her. Her lips quivered as she spoke again. "Just for Ari, face what's next." Ari nodded, though uncertainty knotted every nerve. With shaking fingers, Ari reached into the console and flipped open the dashcam's memory card slot. Removing the card, Ari held it like a lifeline. The camera's red light winked out as the card came free, and the car fell into silence at last. No map rerouting, no phantom song, no whispers. Only the rain persisted, gentle and constant. Ari pressed the card to the chest, closed eyes, and whispered, "I'll face it." Dawn had not yet broken, but in that moment, the darkness inside Ari quivered, on the brink of yielding to light. The descent into paranoia had been the hardest road yet. Now came the climb toward whatever lay beyond. Ari returned home before sunrise, the sky a dull bruise of pre-dawn gray. The Camry's headlights swept familiar driveways as Ari guided the car into the garage. Inside, the house was silent, only the soft click of the automatic door and the distant hum of the heater breaking the hush. With trembling hands, Ari set the dashcam's memory card on the kitchen counter and flicked on the overhead light. Steam curled from a neglected mug of cold coffee as Ari powered up the laptop. The whir of the fan filled the room, punctuated by the soft click of keys. Ari inserted the memory card into the reader. On the screen, a folder of video files glared back. Heart pounding, Ari opened the most recent clip. The final moments in the parking lot, the whispered pleas, the woman's silhouette emerging in the dark. The playback began. First, the rain-blurred windshield, streaks of water racing downward. Then Ari's own eyes, wide and haunted in the rearview mirror. And finally, the back seat, empty at first, then slowly, Evelyn's form materializing out of the shadows. Ari's breath hitched as the timestamp flickered oddly. Then a sudden jumped, as if 6 seconds were hidden. Ari paused the video and scrolled back frame by frame. In one fragment, a glint of something moved outside the passenger window, a face pressed against the glass, only fleetingly visible. Ari froze, hand hovering over the mouse. Rewinding, playing again. Yes, there it was. A pale cheek, lipless mouth worn in a silent scream. Fingers shaking, Ari zoomed in on that frame. The face pressed tight against the glass as though watching them from outside. Heart thudding, Ari clicked through the rest of the footage. In every location, the church steps, the warehouse lane, the deserted lot, a faint reflection lingered just beyond the windows. A second pair of headlights that didn't belong, a doorway silhouette that dissolved when the camera panned. Cold dread pooled in Ari's stomach. The dashcam wasn't just a recorder, it was a portal, a threshold between worlds. And every recording had drawn Evelyn closer. Until now, her presence occupied every frame. With a shiver, Ari minimized the video and opened a browser. Searching for Dashcam Ghost Whisper produced pages of forum threads. Drivers claiming disembodied voices, mysterious figures captured in backseat reflections, cameras that picked up things the naked eye could not see. One story stood out, an urban legend of a camera spirit that attached itself to any device that recorded sorrow, demanding confession and absolution in exchange for peace. Ari clicked through the article, a retired detective's blog, lined with case files of unexplained footage. The detective warned drivers to respect what they recorded, to acknowledge the souls caught on film. Otherwise, the spirit would follow them, whispering until they could no longer distinguish memory from nightmare. Ari's throat went dry. Evelyn's spirit had reached out through the dashcam's lens, beckoning for justice and remembrance. Now, even after the final ride, her presence lingered in every recorded pixel. Determined, Ari opened a fresh document and began to type. I, Ari, witnessed the spirit of Evelyn Marshall in my dashcam recordings. I acknowledge her life, her death, and the pain I caused by driving away. This statement is a confession and acknowledgement of her existence, captured here for all to see. Ari's fingers hesitated over the keyboard. Then, with resolve, each keystroke pressed conviction into the text. The confession was raw, unpolished, an admission of guilt, apology, and vow of remembrance. When the last period blinked onto the screen, Ari saved the file as evelynconfession.txt and attached it to an email addressed to the Historical Forum's moderator, the local news station, and every community blog that covered cold case stories. Subject line, Confession and Revelation, the Spirit of Evelyn Marshall. A final click sent the message out into the ether. Ari leaned back, shoulders slumping. Outside, dawn had broken into soft rose light. No whisper rose from the speakers. No phantom route pulsed on the map. For the first time since picking up that silent passenger, the world felt still. Ari exhaled, closing the laptop. The confession alone would not erase the past, but it might lay Evelyn's spirit to rest. And as the first rays of morning light filtered through the kitchen window, Ari allowed a fragile hope to take hold. That acknowledgement and truth could heal even the darkest echoes of the night. Ari spent the rest of the day in a fog of exhaustion, returning calls and messages from people who had responded to the forum post. A neighbor of Evelyn's, a co-worker, even a childhood friend, all sent photographs and recollections, piecing together the vibrant life she'd led before tragedy struck. Their voices, their stories, warmed Ari's heart. And yet, beneath the comfort lay an undercurrent of one persistent question. Would Evelyn's spirit finally rest? As dusk fell, Ari returned to the Camry beneath a gaslit street lamp. The rain-soaked world glimmered as though freshly polished. In the back seat lay the stack of printed messages, photos of Evelyn smiling in sunlit fields and laughing with friends. Ari arranged them carefully atop a folded blanket, creating a makeshift memorial. Tonight, there would be no more rides for strangers. Instead, Ari set the dashcam on the front passenger dash, lens pointed squarely at the back seat, an invitation and a challenge both. The camera's red light blinked steadily, as though eager for its next recording. Ari slid into the driver's seat and took a steadying breath. A single notification pinged on the phone, a private message from the forum moderator, echoing the confession email's subject line, marked urgent. The message read, Ari, the footage you sent has anomalies, voices we can't explain, and images that flicker in ways no editing program can replicate. We believe Evelyn's spirit is still present. Some say to truly free her, you must invite her back, confront her in the same way she found you. If you're willing, set up your cameras and let her return. A shiver ran through Ari. Inviting Evelyn back felt like stepping onto thin ice above dark waters. But the drive to finish what was started, to see her truly at peace, overrode fear. Ari activated the Camry's interior lights and arranged two small cameras, one on the dash pointed at rear-view mirror, another perched beside the headrest aimed directly at the back seat. Then, with gloves on, Ari settled into the driver's seat, the engine off, headlights illuminating the wet pavement. The silence was absolute. Rain whispered against the glass. Ari took out the photo stack and spoke softly as if reading a litany. Evelyn Marshall, you lived, you laughed, you mattered. We have heard you and we remember you. Leaves dripped onto the roof. The street lamp flickered. Ari's breath echoed in the quiet. Minutes passed. Doubt crawled in inch by inch. Was this truly necessary? Was it safe? Ari's hand hovered over the phone's end ride button. If fear won, Ari could simply flee. Then a soft click behind Ari. the sound of a door unlatching. Ari's head snapped around. The rear door swung open silently, and there she was, Evelyn, stepping into the glowing cabin as though walking between worlds. Her white dress was pristine, though damp, and her eyes shone with a calm intensity. Ari's heart hammered so loudly it felt in every bone. "Evelyn, I invited you." The words trembled. "I want you to be free." She offered no reply. Instead, she settled into the back seat, sitting exactly where Ari had first encountered her. For a moment, time held its breath. Then came her whisper, low, melodic, and reverent. "Thank you." Ari swallowed. "You have all these memories now. People know your name." Ari touched the photo stack through the gap between seats. "They remember you." Her head tilted. Light from the dashcam reflected in her eyes. "But do you?" And then her fingers brushed one photograph, the sunlit meadow. The camera clicked softly as she leaned forward. Ari's chest tightened. "I," but Evelyn placed a finger to Ari's lips, halting the apology halfway. Her voice, barely more than a breath, drifted into the cabin. "I forgive you." Ari's throat clenched. "I forgive me too," Ari whispered back. Silence wrapped them like a warm blanket. The camera's red lights glowed steady, recording every exchanged breath. Outside, the rain softened to a drizzle. The street lamp overhead burned steady, bathing the Camry in soft golden light. At last, Evelyn stood, smoothing her dress. She reached toward the dashcam lens on the passenger dash. As her gloved fingertip touched the glass, the red light blinked once, then went dark. Ari's breath slowed. The cabin felt tranquil. Evelyn turned to face Ari, a peaceful smile gracing her lips, then faded, as though the humid air itself had dissolved her form. The back seat lay empty, save for the photo stack now strewn gently across the seat. Ari let out a trembling laugh, part relief, part sorrow. With care, Ari collected the photographs, arranging them back into the binder. The camera's red lights remained off. The dashcam's lens sat dormant, its lens cap in place. Ari started the engine, and the Camry's headlights carved through the night once more. No whisper echoed from the back seat. No phantom route lit up on the map. The world beyond the windows had returned to its familiar hum of distant cars and dripping gutters. As Ari drove home, the weight on the shoulders felt gone, as though a heavy cloak had been lifted. Evelyn's presence remained, in every photo, in every shared memory, but not as a restless spirit. She was free. When Ari finally parked in the driveway and stepped inside the house, the dashcam's memory card lay on the console, still recording nothing. Ari placed it in a small envelope labeled Evelyn's Release and slid it into the desk drawer. That night, as rain pattered softly on the roof, Ari closed the door to the garage with quiet certainty. The passenger who only spoke to the camera had found her voice, and Ari's own story, once haunted by guilt and fear, could now fall into peaceful silence. Ari sat behind the wheel, the cabin warm and still, the engine's hum muted in the aftermath of Evelyn's departure. Yet the atmosphere crackled with something unresolved, an echo of her final presence. The dashcam lay silent on the passenger dash, its red light extinguished, but Ari sensed that silence could still speak. Fingers brushing the steering wheel, Ari exhaled. "What now?" Ari whispered to the empty seat. The answer came not through electronics, but the soft, almost memory of Evelyn's voice lingering in the air. "Watch." Heart thumping, Ari reached for the dashcam and slid the memory card into the console slot. The device powered on, no red recording light this time, but a pale amber glow. On the screen, the last frames played back. Evelyn's gentle smile, her gloved finger tapping the lens, the world outside the Camry's windows muted and gray. Then, nothing, just the empty backseat. Ari pressed play again, watching for any sign of the impossible. A whisper, a reflection. Halfway through the clip, the image stuttered. The timestamp glitching from 0:40:42 back to 08:35, as though someone or something had rewound time. Ari's breath caught. The ambient soundtrack swelled with the soft patter of imagined rain, then, faint like a distant breeze, a whisper. Ari leaned closer. The captioned audio read, "Your future waits." The words weren't spoken in the backseat that night. They must have been recorded earlier, perhaps during the very first ride. Now they replayed at the end, as though Evelyn's spirit was reaching backward in time to deliver one final message. Ari tapped the timestamp slider, rewinding to the beginning of the ride. The clip started, rain, wipers, Ari's tired eyes in the rearview. Then, as the woman settled into the back seat for the first time, her voice almost lost beneath static. You will drive until you die. Ari's jaw clenched at the memory. Forward. Past the church. Past the alley. The whisper glowed faintly at, "Your time is counted." Ari felt that old dread coil in the gut, and now, in the final frames, this new whisper hovered, "Your future waits." Ari paused the video and exhaled slowly. 3 prophecies, all uttered by a passenger who only spoke to the camera. First whisper, "You will drive until you die." Second whisper, under the overpass, "Your time is counted." Final whisper, buried at the end, "Your future waits." Ari's pulse pounded. What future? The drive of confession and absolution had released Evelyn, but these words hinted at something personal, Ari's own destiny. Determined, Ari backed out of the driveway and headed toward the city's old observatory on Hillcrest Road. The place seemed absurdly poetic, a dome of steel and glass where people looked up at the stars, searching for meaning. If Evelyn's spirit delivered her last riddles through the dashcam, perhaps here Ari could unmask their purpose. The drive was uneventful, streets emptying as the hour grew late. Headlights carved twin beams into the night, and the wipers kept a steady beat. Ari kept replaying those final words over and over in the mind. "Your future waits." Pulling into the observatory's lot, Ari felt a hush descend. The dome loomed overhead, lit by a single floodlight, its metal panels gleaming. A locked side door offered no entry, but through a narrow slit of window, Ari could see the telescope aimed high toward the heavens. Stepping from the Camry, Ari carried the dashcam in gloved hands, the device an artifact of that otherworldly journey. Inside the dim glow, Ari pressed record on the camera and pointed it upward at the crack of sky visible through the slit. "Evelyn," Ari began softly, "you told me to watch. I'm watching the sky now. Tell me what I must know." For a moment, nothing changed. The only movement was the quiet wheeze of wind through vents and the distant hum of city lights. Then on the dashcam screen, something flickered. A starburst of light that hadn't been there before, shimmering against the dark. Ari blinked and steadied the camera. The starburst resolved into a shape, a constellation of 3 bright points, faint lines sketching a symbol. An hourglass tilted on its side. Ari's breath hitched. The symbol resonated deep in memory, etched into the church's stained glass shards, painted in graffiti under the overpass, traced in the icy patterns on the frozen panes of a basement window months earlier. Ari realized Evelyn had been guiding this revelation all along. A soft whisper came through the camera's microphone, though the observatory was silent. "Time flows, but moments endure." Ari's vision swirled. The tilted hourglass meant paused time, a reminder that though fate runs its course, an individual's choices can reshape the flow. The 3 prophecies had been warnings, but also invitations. "You will drive until you die," urged Ari to confront mortality rather than flee. "Your time is counted," reminded Ari that life is finite. "Your future waits," revealed that beyond endings lie new beginnings, if only one dares to step into them. Ari's eyes brimmed with tears, sorrow for Evelyn's lost life, gratitude for her final lessons. With trembling fingers, Ari whispered into the camera, "I choose my future. I will drive on, but to help, to heal, to remember." The hourglass constellation pulsed once more, then faded into ordinary starlight. The observatory's floodlight blinked, as though acknowledging the vow. Ari lowered the dashcam, heart alight with purpose. The camera had been Evelyn's conduit, but now it served Ari's own. The world beyond held uncertainty. But in that silent, sacred moment among the stars, Ari understood that every drive henceforth would honor life, Evelyn's and every passenger's. Guided by the knowledge that though time flows ever onward, each whispered promise can shape what waits ahead. Ari drove away from the observatory under a sky still heavy with stars, the crisp night air carrying the echo of Evelyn's final lesson. Each rotation of the wheels felt charged with purpose, as though the Camry itself sensed the shift in Ari's resolve. The city streets stretched out, lined with lamplights that arcs like silent witnesses. In the distance, the familiar hum of life, distant radios, muffled footsteps, the soft rumble of distant traffic, reminded Ari that the world moved on, unknowing, unceasing. Yet inside the car, silence reigned. The dashcam sat inert on the dash, its lens clean and unthreatening. Ari's hands rested lightly on the wheel, mind racing yet calm. No route pulsed on the map. No phantom whispers threaded through the speakers, only the steady breathing of the driver and the soft sigh of tires on wet pavement. But Ari knew the cycle remained unbroken until one last test. A promise hung in the air to drive on, committed to life's fragility and beauty. To prove it, Ari would return once more to the place where the ordeal had begun, Hawthorne Lane, the site of Evelyn's accident. Turning off the highway, Ari followed empty streets past shuttered storefronts and dimly lit flats. The GPS remained off, replaced by Ari's memory of curves and intersections. When the turn onto Hawthorne Lane appeared, marked only by a faded street sign, Ari slowed and eased the Camry onto the slick asphalt. Under the dull glow of a solitary street lamp, the palette of paint-chipped boards of the old chapel gleamed in muted bronze. A hush settled as Ari parked. The church steps stood empty now. No ivy, no lantern glow, just the cold stone worn by years of neglect. Yet Ari felt Evelyn's presence more profoundly here than anywhere else. Stepping out, Ari pressed a hand to the hood, heart thudding. "I promise to break the cycle," Ari whispered to the night. "Tonight, I make it right." Ari retrieved the dash cam, now fitted with a fresh memory card, and clipped it firmly to the windshield. The red recording light blinked on, sturdy and insistent. Then, moving to the passenger seat, Ari opened the glove box and placed inside the stack of confessions, photos, printed forum replies, all tangible proofs that Evelyn's story lived on. Ari returned to the driver's seat, took a steadying breath, and started the engine. The dashcam's light pulsed in time. Outside, the rain began anew, soft droplets pattering on the roof as if blessing this final act. Ari flicked on the headlights, illuminating the chapel's boarded door. Then Ari spoke, voice steady. "Evelyn Marshall, 1985 to 2024. Here I am, in the place where your path ended and mine crossed. I'm not leaving until the cycle ends." The rain intensified, each drop echoing like applause. Ari shut off the engine. The world tipped into a hush, broken only by the hiss of rain. Ari's reflection in the rearview mirror gazed back, determined, unbowed. Moments passed. Then the faintest sound behind Ari, a soft creak of boards. Ari turned to see the chapel door's planks shifting. A narrow panel slid aside, enough for a single movement. A pale hand reached through, brushing against the wood from inside. Ari's pulse spiked. This was the moment of reckoning. Ari's lips parted in a silent invitation. "Evelyn," the panel swung fully open. There she stood, lifeless dress now shaded by moonlit gray, hair streaming wet like black waterfalls. But her eyes held no sorrow, only a quiet steadiness. She entered the rain-spattered air, stepping down onto the asphalt, her bare feet leaving no imprint. Ari cut the dome light on, bathing the cabin in soft white glow. "You've guided me through the past, now tell me how to move forward." She paused, then leaned toward the dashcam lens, lips barely moving. But this time, Ari heard each word clearly, his own voice on the recording. "Thank you for remembering me. Now, break the cycle." Ari's brow furrowed. Break the cycle of what? Her hand brushed the dashcam gently, the red light flickering. As she spoke, her voice emerged in the car's speakers, clear and steady. Silence. Guilt. Fear. Ari's throat constricted. Those three had governed every heartbeat since that fateful night. "I understand," Ari said. "Silence breaks with truth, guilt breaks with confession, fear breaks with action." She nodded once, solemn and revered. Then her voice, fading like mist, whispered, "Then speak. Confess to the world who I was and who you will be." Ari reached to the glove box and retrieved a small recorder previously concealed, the confession file on a USB drive. Ari placed it on the dash alongside the dashcam lens. "I will," Ari promised. "I'll publish everything, your story, my journey, and the vow I make tonight." She stepped closer, hand extending as though to touch Ari's shoulder, an impossible gesture that ghosted through rain. Wherever her form moved, the raindrops parted, tracing her outline like haloed light. Ari felt a warmth spread through the chest, not of fire, but of peace. The cycle trembled, then began to unravel. The dashcam light blinked once more, then went dark. The rain softened to a whisper. The chapel steps lay silent behind the car. Ari exhaled, heart-laden and light at once. Stepping out, Ari closed the door with a decisive click, leaving both dashcam and recorder behind. The chapel steps, once the brink of darkness, now stood quiet, cycle broken, echoes stilled. Ari walked away under the street lamp's halo, each footstep a promise, to drive with compassion, to speak with honesty, to live without fear. The Camry's headlights disappeared around the bend, leaving behind empty asphalt and the hush of rain. In that midnight moment, Hawthorne Lane held only one truth. The cycle was no more. Silence, guilt, and fear had been confronted, and at last could rest. Ari gripped the wheel as the Camry's engine roared to life, headlights cutting through the damp darkness. The final chapter of this night's ordeal would not unfold on empty side streets or forgotten alleys, but on the open highway under the vast expanse of sky. This would be the last ride, a race against whatever fate those whispered prophecies had promised. The GPS, once so willful, now lay dormant on the console. Ari guided the car onto the on-ramp, wheels biting into the wet pavement. Rain had returned in full, each drop tapping out a nervous rhythm on the roof. The city lights shrank behind in a smear of gold and red, until the only illumination came from the Camry's twin beams and the endless ribbon of road ahead. Ari's heart thundered. Every nerve was alight. Every shadow seemed pregnant with anticipation. The memory of Evelyn's silhouette under the street lamp haunted the periphery of vision, as though warning of one last test. Then, without warning, the backseat door swung open, though no one had touched the lock. Ari's breath caught. Turning in the seat, Ari saw Evelyn stepping in, wearing her white dress and soaked hair, eyes calm and resolute. She dissolved into the dark behind the driver's headrest, indistinct yet undeniably present. Ari slammed the door shut, foot lurching down on the accelerator. The car surged forward, tires finding traction on the slick blacktop. Ahead, the highway curved beneath a storm-laden sky, thunder rumbling like distant drums. "Evelyn," Ari called over the roar of the engine, voice steady despite the chaos. "This is it. No more running." She appeared in the rearview mirror, pale and full-faced, lips parting in a soft smile. Then, clear as if spoken right beside Ari's ear, her voice resonated. "Face the end or begin again." Ari's muscles tensed. "Begin again," Ari breathed and pressed harder on the throttle. The Camry leapt forward, passing under an overpass painted with the hourglass symbol. The lightning-flashed sky split in two, revealing a brief starburst that matched the constellation Ari had seen at the observatory. It felt like a sign. Wheels sliced through puddles, sending arcs of spray outward. The speedometer climbed. On the horizon, the city reemerged in neon streaks. Ari aimed for the bridge that spanned the river, the place of the very first glitch, where the dashcam light had first flickered in the dark. As the bridge's steel trusses rose overhead, Ari's hands tightened. In the rear view, Evelyn drifted closer, features bright in the passing lamplight. Her whisper followed in the speakers. "Choose your ending." Ari exhaled, vision narrowing to the road ahead. At the bridge's midpoint, Ari lifted a hand and tapped the dashcam mounted on the dash. The red light blinked on, recording the final moment. Ari's other hand slid the seatbelt release and unbuckled, leaning back to face the backseat. "I choose life," Ari declared, voice unwavering. "I choose to drive on, with all I've learned." Evelyn's form wavered at that confession, shifting like mist. Her eyes shone with approval. Then, the world around trembled. The bridge's lights flickered. Rain dazzled in the headlights. In the dashcam's view, Ari watched as the road behind seemed to ripple and dissolve into darkness, as though the night itself was folding away. A single whisper, audible both inside and through the recording, cut through the storm, "Then begin." Ari's chest tightened, but the fear had gone. A fierce clarity burned in the heart. With a firm exhale, Ari leaned forward, buckled in, and pressed down again to accelerate away from the bridge, away from the past that had nearly consumed both driver and passenger. Weeks later, the dashcam footage lay sealed in a police evidence room, the memory card labeled E. Marshall. Investigators watched in silence as the video played. The first ride under Cedar Avenue's street lamp. A silent woman tapping the camera, whispers, "You will drive until you die." The chase through rain-slicked alleys, prophecies echoing in the void. The abandoned chapel and final invitation break the cycle. The bridge confrontation, Evelyn's last words, and Ari's vow. On the footage's last frame, the Camry sped away under stormy skies, red taillights receding into darkness. For a moment, the dashcam light blinked, faint, almost imperceptible, before the screen cut to black. Detectives exchanged glances. No logical explanation fit what they'd seen. But every file, every testimonial from forum posters, and every photo assembled into a single truth. Evelyn Marshall had mattered, her story reclaimed from silence. And her final gift to Ari, a promise of renewal, remained etched in that haunted tape. As the evidence locker door closed, the room fell silent. Outside, rain began again, a soft reminder that every ending carries the seed of a new beginning. And somewhere out there, an Uber driver named Ari drove on, guided by lessons learned in whispers through a camera, and forever changed by the passenger who only talked to the lens.